Let's continue with this series. For those new or don't remember, about 10 months ago I made a video titled The 3 Lies About the Soviet Union and What the Truth Is. That video covered misconceptions about poverty in the Soviet Union, the myth that Joseph Stalin was a Russian nationalist, and various myths about the gulags. I've also covered the myth about Stalin's endorsement of mass rape in this video. Today I want to focus on Joseph Stalin himself. I want to go over 3 lies, misconceptions, or backstory about the man as a sort of part 2 to the Soviet Union video. As always, I'll try to leave links to my sources in the description. I'll try to avoid paywalled content as much as I can. I hope you'll learn a thing or two, and come out of this video with a different outlook on Joseph Stalin. Let's get started. One of the myths you probably heard about Stalin is that he was power hungry. Completely false. Stalin was the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union from 1922 until its abolishment in 1952, but he was not the head of government. The chairman of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet, in other words the head of the state of the Soviet Union, belonged to 2 different people during Stalin's supposed rule. These 2 people would be Mikhail Kalinin from 1919 to 1946 and Nikolai Shvernik from 1946 to 1953. The chair of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet was the standing organ of the highest body of state authority in the Soviet Union. Joseph Stalin did not become the premier, the head of government, until 1941, and continued to hold that position for close to 12 years until his death in 1953. He was the minister of the armed forces of the Soviet Union for 5.5 years from July 1941 to March 1947. Notice that this was throughout the German invasion of the Soviet Union. In 1952, Stalin wanted to resign from all of his duties, but they wouldn't even let him, citing his incredible leadership even as his health was failing. This notion that Stalin was power hungry is not only a lie, but a projection conjured by monopolists, oligarchs, and politicians who turn around and work to consolidate power and concentrate wealth in as few hands as possible. Even CIA documents attest to collective leadership in the Soviet Union under Stalin. A myth that's been tossed around a lot by left communists, especially since the start of the Gaza genocide, is that Stalin supported the creation of Israel. Stalin, however, was anti-Zionist. In 1913, he published Marxism and the National Question, where in the notes he defined Zionism as, quote, a reactionary nationalist trend of the Jewish bourgeoisie, which had followers along the intellectuals and the more backward sections of the Jewish workers. The Zionists endeavored to isolate the Jewish working class masses from the general struggle of the proletariat, unquote. Despite this, his position was outvoted in the Central Committee, leading to the Soviet Union recognizing Israel. It should be understood that the events of the Holocaust clouded the judgment of people who would otherwise stand against Israel as a settler colonialist endeavor, instead wishing to create a safe haven for Jewish people within the biblical Promised Land. This error in judgment was only seen once the 1948 Arab-Israeli War and the Nakba began, and the Warsaw Pact began providing support to Syria and Lebanon as well as guaranteeing their independence. You can read more about it here. The final lie we'll be looking at is more of a lie about the Soviet Union than it is about Stalin, but it's Stalin-era Soviet Union, so close enough. Anyway, the lie is that Stalin was a friend of the German Reich. I always find it funny that liberals will whip this one out anytime the Soviet Union is mentioned, especially within the context of World War II. The story goes, the German Reich and the Soviet Union both had territorial ambitions in Poland. The Soviets wanted to unite Belarus and Ukraine, parts of which nations Poland occupied. The Germans, on the other hand, wanted to pop the Pomeranian Corridor, which separated East Prussia from the German mainland. Hitler wanted to make this eastward expansion, but wanted to do so in a way that wouldn't provoke the Soviet Union, being too weak at the time to successfully stand toe-to-toe with the Red Army, and ironically never went on to become strong enough. So, Germany proposed a non-aggression pact, which would become known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, and both countries invaded Poland, absorbing the nation. And based off this, liberals conclude that the Soviet Union was initially an ally of the German Reich. The funny thing about this is it's debunked purely by historical fact. The people pushing this lie always conveniently forget about appeasement, which was a foreign policy adopted by British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, who traded Austria and Czechoslovakia for peace. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was the second-to-last non-aggression pact that the German Reich signed with its ideological rivals. The Polish, Japanese, French, Danish, Estonians, and Latvians all signed non-aggression pacts with the Germans before the Soviets did, with the British, Italians, Romanians, and Lithuanians all signing some form of treaty or agreement in addition. The final non-aggression pact the Germans signed was with Turkey in 1941. Stalin urged the Western Allies to form a pact to contain German aggression and expansion. France was highly on board, but wouldn't press forward unless the British were also involved. France was willing to make concessions, but Britain foolishly held out, hoping that war could still be avoided. If anyone was willing to help Germany and was an initial ally of the German Reich, it was, without a shadow of a doubt, the United Kingdom under Neville Chamberlain. They more or less sponsored pre-war partitioning of Europe and handed these countries over to the Germans. It was only when Germany's ambitions started to interfere with capitalist hegemony that the Western Allies really feel the need to do anything, and even then didn't fight hardly at all until almost a year had passed. The declaration of war on Germany by the Western Allies was merely performative, and only done to put on a show of solidarity for Poland. It was only when the Netherlands, a major trading partner of the United Kingdom, was invaded did the Allies actually engage the Germans. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was set to expire in 1949, but as I think we all know, fascists can never be trusted. A lesson learned first by the Soviet Union when the Germans launched a surprise invasion against them 8 years before the end of the pact. The pact ultimately bought the Soviet Union time to help alleviate the effects of the recent famine as well as the Great Purge, and to build up its forces in preparation for what they knew was an inevitable attack from Germany. The subreddit for the deprogram has an essay on this if you'd like to read more about it. In closing this video off, I want to send a message to liberals, conservatives, and really any working class proletarians that self-identify as anti-communist. You have been fooled. You have been fooled about Stalin, you have been fooled about the Soviet Union, you've been fooled about China, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba, and you've been fooled about socialism itself. The government has lied to you about every socialist experiment, and about the ideology itself, and the people who have led socialist experiments. The government has systems of news media and journalism set up so they can pass these lies down to the working class. Don't believe me? Where is the headquarters for Radio Free Europe located? Who is funding them? Who's funding Radio Free Asia? From now on, I urge you to stop following the news and to stop letting these people think for you. Stop letting pundits think for you. Stop letting think tanks think for you. Stop letting grifters think for you, and stop letting politicians think for you. They have worked tirelessly to divide the working class against itself, on race, nationality, income level, gender, and politics. Liberals especially have advertised a form of progressivism that still conforms to bourgeois interests, patriarchy, and white supremacy. It's time to end this. It's time to come together to learn a new way of thinking and overthrow the capitalist system that keeps everyone down, not just in terms of living standards, but socially, creatively, ideologically, and academically. I started off looking at r/communism memes on my phone, then watching second thought videos, and then progressing to people like Hakim and Marxism Today, then listening to the Deprogram podcast, learning the perspective of people that actually know what life under socialism is like, minus defector testimonies, which are bullshit 90% of the time anyway, and reading actual theory as well, or at least listening to audiobooks of works by Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, and Rosa Luxemburg. For this video, I highly recommend reading Stalin, his book Marxism and the National Question, which I talked about earlier, as well as Falsifiers of History, which talks more about the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, and Economic Problems of Socialism in the USSR, which is Economic Theory by Stalin. I hope everyone learned something new here. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to click thumbs up, share the video far and wide, leave your thoughts in the comments below, further lies you'd like to debunk, extra sources, and Discourse is a welcome site, and please subscribe for more content like this as there will be more. And click the bell to get notified when I upload. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back soon with another video. Bye guys.